Well, welcome to Lessons from the Sideline. I'm Tom Crean, and I'm doing this as part of the Harbaugh Coaching Academy. My two brother-in-laws, John and Jim, a little busy right now with their NFL football teams, but this is a family affair and something that we've enjoyed. And if you've heard this, you've already heard John and Jim inside of this podcast too. I thought outstanding interviews with them. The interviewer was okay, but the subjects were great. And that's going to be the same case today because we've got someone now that has got such a wide variety of experiences in being a leader, in watching leadership, in studying leadership, outstanding basketball coach for many, many years, outstanding basketball commentator, analyst, however you want to look at it. Every aspect of it, a tremendous clinician in basketball that's done it not only in the United States, but throughout the world. Two sons that are in the game right now, one with the Washington Wizards as an assistant coach, one with Harvard as an assistant coach. And again, a guy that I've known for a very long time. And you've heard from John and Jim and now with Fran. The three of them were all in our wedding 32 years ago when I married Joni Harbaugh and the day she became Joni Crean. But there's so many things that Fran and I could catch up on, but we want to talk to you and give him every opportunity to share some great leadership insights. So with that said, welcome, Fran, to the Lessons from the Sideline podcast.
I love being on, Tom. The first two guests were obviously two guys I admire. You know, at my stage of my career, I always say wisdom is a combination of many failures and some successes. And like you do, you just try to pass on that wisdom, quote unquote, to young coaches. In my case, in your case, young broadcasters too. So I love sharing the game, as you know, better than anybody, and I love learning. And I think you'd agree because you're in the same ilk that I actually learned something about basketball every single week of my life. I really do. And there's always things that I say to myself, man, I wish I knew that when I was coaching, whether it's a drill or a play or a way to deal with young people. So we'll just kind of go back and forth because I've got a lot of wisdom because I have a few failures and
Well,
hopefully some
but you've got a
success.
lot of wisdom because you've had a lot of success too. And
Yeah,
if there's so many things that you do, and if people only knew you, let's say they didn't know anything else, but they knew you were on Twitter, on X,
yeah,
and the things that you provided people, that would be a benefit in itself, even without knowing all the experiences that you have. And you're such a great person to follow because it's always going to be in a teaching mode. And there's some fun, there's some sarcasm, there's some
yeah,
coming back at people, but
yeah,
95% of the
yeah,
time, people are going to learn something when they go there. And I want to start with that into
yeah.
this transition. Successful coaching career, certainly as an assistant coach, as a head coach, coached at Manhattan College, coached at St. John's, coached at the University of New Mexico, and then you transitioned into broadcasting. You transitioned into television and actually radio. And as you and I both know, it is way harder for coaches and players than a lot of times what they think, and way harder than I think maybe the general public thinks sometimes for people to make that transition. Well, you've made it to where you've been at the top of your game for a long time, and there's no doubt about that. But I want to hit this first. What were the key things for you to become comfortable doing television and radio that your coaching career helped build for you?
Well, it's a great question. First of all, literally from the time I was 14, I wanted to be a college basketball coach growing up in Brooklyn. And the way I look at it, Tom, all these many years later, I've never been away from the game, whether it's the 23 years of coaching and now, believe it or not, 23 years of broadcasting. So obviously the love of the game of basketball has been with me since I was a young child, you know. So that's the first thing. I think from a broadcasting standpoint, when you grow up where I grew up in New York City and you got the pro teams and you got, St. John's, you're always arguing and talking about sports. And I got good at that. I got good at, having an opinion, I guess. And then I think another thing that really helped me was my first head coaching job, as you know, was at Manhattan College. And had I been at Bowling Green winning the way I did at Manhattan, I'm not sure my career would have taken off, with the ability to go to a place like St. John's. But when you're in New York City, even at Manhattan, you're around the media. God forbid John Wooden passes away, CBS sends a camera crew up to Manhattan College to get a, like a soundbite from me. So I was lucky as a young head coach to always be around the media in the media market mecca of the world, I guess. I got really comfortable talking into a microphone, and some of it's my background, as I said, but some of it is just repetition and the love of the game and sharing the game. So I'll never be at a loss for words when it comes to having an opinion on the game of basketball. And it just kind of happened gradually. And I can tell you, like, I just told a young head coach, first time head coach, Stephen Pearl, I said it took me 5 games as a head coach for the first time to figure out, hey, I can do this. And it's very similar in broadcasting. You know the subject, and all it's a matter now of the the technique and the, I don't know what they call it, just knowing how to put a headset on and listen to a producer in the truck. It came really naturally, and I know for you it's the same thing. But the overarching theme is I've been a basketball junkie my entire life, and I love sharing what I know, and then also what I keep learning and pass it on. See, it's easy.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you do fantastic with that. If there's one thing I've learned from broadcasting, it's a lesson in small group leadership every night. Whether you're in the studio, whether you're in the game,
Yeah.
whether the crew is with you. Then there's sometimes it's Remy games, which means your producer, your director. You may not even see them because they're back in either Bristol or Charlotte or someplace like that. What are the biggest takeaways that you've gained right now that would help people from what is the key to being involved in that small group leadership? Because really, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
for coaches, for leaders, that's really what it boils down to.
Well, let's
So, what are the greatest lessons you've
yeah,
taken now?
let's educate people. Like, when you and I are in front of a microphone or a camera at a game or in studio, there are production people either in the truck or in the studio with you that are essentially the coach of that broadcast. What I learned early on, and it took me a couple years, that if they're producing the game, I'm really the executive producer. Like, oftentimes you'll work with people who love basketball, but they don't know basketball like you do. And because you and I were coaches and teachers, my goal every night on TV is to explain the game in a simple way that the casual Fran will say, "Well, I didn't know that. That's really cool. He just taught me something." And I have to teach our production people the same thing. There's got to be a comfort level that I know they're in charge of the broadcast. They know what looks and sounds good, and they produce the game. But I, in a sense, like a TV producer or a movie producer, I'm the executive producer. For that game, I know what's going to be important. I try to distill it down to a small couple of themes that they can follow me, and also the fan at home can say, boy, that's pretty good. I learned something. Because one thing I learned early on, we all want to show people at home how much we know about the game. And then I think you get overloaded and you get the diarrhea of the mouth. And I learned from some great people. And by the way, everything I've learned about TV broadcasting, I learned from the great people that you and I work with. And I learned that less is more sometimes. Pick out a few things that you want to hit home on and hammer them home so the fan at home, casual or a junkie, can say, wow, he just taught me something. And then the other thing is, you got to have fun with this. Even though you and I, are getting this opportunity to be on ESPN or Peacock or Big Ten Network, whatever it is, it's entertainment. Whether it's storytelling or having fun with your partner, you got to be able to make fun of yourself, self-deprecating humor. You can't, and I tried not to act like a know-it-all. I try to act like the guy at the bar that you like having a conversation. I'm drinking an iced tea, by the way, but the guy at the bar that you enjoy talking with while you're watching a game.
You make a great point, and I'm going to go to another question in a second, but I think this is so important because whether you're a parent, whether you're a leader, a coach, whatever it is, and you're watching this, listening to this, what happens is we all have a tendency, and I know I do as much as anyone, to overtalk, to have so many thoughts going on in your head. And even though you've written them down at times, you still keep going. What has broadcasting taught you that if you walked into a boardroom, you walked into a meeting room again, about being succinct and really being able to get your point across? And how do you go about making sure that you stay, so to speak, on time with that?
Collaboration, inclusion. you may know more about that particular game that night when Kansas plays Baylor than anybody else in the production crew and on the talent side. Me and let's say John Shambi, my play-by-play guy, but I have to come across uh, collegially. I'll give you two examples, and these were two great lessons. My first game with the great Brent Musburger, and I mean that sincerely, man. That guy, I had so much fun. Yeah, Hall of Famer, right? I mean, so many great moments in sports broadcasting he was a part of. But I'll never forget, we're having lunch at McAllister's in Lawrence, Kansas. And that's one of the things I enjoy, Tom, talking about collaboration is that day of the game, you're with your crew, you're talking about the game, you're sharing ideas. And so I remember like being at lunch and my producer said, Fran, what do you think about tonight? How do you think this game's going to go? And I told him, I gave him my 30-second spiel, and Brent disagreed. And he said, but here's how he did it. I'm going to have to disagree with the old coach right here. I think tonight's story is going to be the big guys inside. He was basically saying to me, you know a lot, but here's what I think will be good television. And you know what I mean? And I loved it. I loved it because that guy done 10,000 broadcasts. And so that's an example of collaboration. Here's another great story that you'll like. I'm working with Mike Breen, the great Hall of Fame, NBA announcer, New York Knicks. Now, I've been friends with Mike a long time. During the NBA strike in 2011, they put him on a few college games to keep him busy. So we're doing Georgetown at Alabama. And the funny thing was, out the back of the window of the Hampton Inn was a junkyard in Tuscaloosa. Now, this guy's used to Ritz-Carlton, L.A., and, the Four Seasons Galleria.
Obviously not a hotel that Nick Saban
Yeah.
put his recruits in, or the basketball
No, he
team.
wasn't. We were at the Hampton Inn, and literally his window was the backyard of a junkyard. Okay, so we're doing the game, and it comes down to the final seconds, and Georgetown kid hits a shot at the buzzer. Mike screams, I scream. Okay, at the same time, the game ends. He takes his headset off and he says, "Hey, I let you talk for 39 and a half minutes. The last 15 seconds is my show." And I said, Mike, I didn't know that. And he taught me something. And
Sure.
and in speaking of collaboration, when I work with a young play-by-play guy now, I've been doing this a while, so they get maybe a little intimidated, but I'm working with Fran Fraschilla. I often say to them, either at lunch or before the game, hey, listen, in the last 2 minutes of the game, when there's a timeout, just say to me, Coach, what are they saying in the huddle? And then in the last 15 seconds, it's your show, and I'm laying out. And I want them to have a comfort level working with me because I've collaborated with them. So I think that's a big thing. And I think that's true of a superstar, right? On a great team. The superstar is the guy that takes the rookie out to lunch or, makes sure that everybody feels comfortable in that locker room. And I don't consider myself a superstar, but I think you get the point. Like the guy that maybe is in charge has got to be the guy that also has the empathy to say, hey, you're with me tonight. We're going to be a great team.
I had a producer the other night when I was doing the Timberwolves game, Trevor Hendry, and he made a great point, and I want to throw this at you, and because I think this hits leadership too in a huge step with everybody. And he said, proclaim, then explain. And I thought that was really good. And because then I was thinking about it on the flight home, and I'm thinking like, that's how we've got to be as parents. That's how you've got to be able to get somebody's attention.
Yes.
And then be, especially in this world, right, where so much of it is coming on screen, right? Like get their attention, so that they'll listen. And I always talk about it with a team.
I'm writing this.
You
down.
don't try to get a team. You don't try to get a team to listen.
Yeah.
You pierce the team, or you pierce somebody, and now all of a sudden they are ready to hear it. They are ready to get better. But you don't just get their attention by throwing things out. So proclaim, then explain. Okay, in leadership, what does that mean to you, and what would be some of the best steps you go with that?
Oh, I love it, man. I wrote it down. It's genius. Yeah, it really is. When you said it, I was thinking that's parenting, right? You make a hard
But
statement.
it's coaching, it's everything.
Yeah,
It's every bit
yeah.
of this. It's anybody that needs to get a point across to people and keep
Yes.
them listening, whether it's television. The average teenager, what is the concentration span? 8 seconds, right? Like, how do you That's exactly what he's saying.
Yeah, I love it. I would say this, like when I coached and I saw you coach, there were days that I knew I was going to be theatrical in
Hmm.
practice, or mainly in practice. That was our teaching laboratory, and so I would do something or say something to get everybody's attention, and then say, "This is why we're doing this." And it's almost like, and to your point on TV, I'll say something boldly. Now that's another thing, being decisive. Whether you're coaching, whether you're a parent, whether you're a broadcaster, I always try to, and I learned this from people, be decisive about what you believe and then explain why you believe that. And so on a given night, I might say, there's no way Iowa State can win this game tonight unless they out rebound Kansas. I'm just telling you right now, John, there's no way Iowa State can win this game unless they battle Kansas on the glass and win that battle. So I've made a decisive statement, and now I have to explain why. And that happens all the time. And it's the same thing with your kids. Like, you're in by 11, okay? You're coming home by 11 tonight. Dad, but wait a minute. No. You're home by 11. And then later on, in a quiet moment, maybe when we're in the gym shooting, hey, Dad, let's go get some shots up. Hey, James, you understand nothing good happens after 11 p.m. anywhere.
Yeah, good point.
Like, so
Sure.
all I'm doing is protecting you. If you want to hang out with your friends at our house, bring them over. They can stay as long as they want. They can sleep over. So I love that. I wrote that down, man. Proclaim and explain.
Well, I think again, and I think this why I knew this would be a fun podcast with you because everything in television, everything in coaching, everything in leadership, and that's one of the reasons that we've always talked so much about different books because you've never just been locked into one sport or to one genre of book. You've
Yeah.
always been all across the map because you see the similarities, you see the comparisons, and I've been the same way. And I think a lot of that is what leadership is for people too. And I think, and again, I want to flip the script here in a second. One more television
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
after this,
Yeah.
but in coaching, okay, in television, in life, there's so many people, they make a bold statement. All right, they make a proclamation, right? You see that in coaching all the time. They make a proclamation, but they really don't explain anything. And they really, and then all of a sudden, well, they don't really believe that because I'm not buying what they're saying. That's a TV hit. Or they don't really know what they're talking about. They're just trying to get a viral hit. They're trying to get likes. How do you decipher, okay, when you're going through, and I think this would be helpful for a lot of people here, you knowing what you know, and you're hearing somebody come across, because you and I have talked about this, earnestness is the new, people try to sell earnestness as honesty. Well, a lot of times earnestness is just another way to be theatrical right now. And to you, like, how do you decipher through that? What advice would you give people on seeing between what's real and what's really not real, even though it sounds the same?
I think earnestness is hard to be theatrical about, honestly. Because if you listen to somebody long enough, you can know whether they're full of it or they don't believe what they're saying. And you can often tell, even with coaches, right? Why do guys like playing for certain coaches? Like, I listened to John, your brother-in-law's podcast with you, and I've been lucky enough to be around John a little bit through the years. And like the one thing that just stands out about John is the players love him by and large. You're not going to please every single player, but there's a connection with players because he's so earnest about how he coaches. We all know that it's important to separate the transaction from the transformational development of a player, right? We've heard that many times. Who was it? Joe Ehrman, I think, the high school coach from Baltimore that said it, right? Don't be a transactional coach, be a transformational coach. And I think earnestness is, I would hope it's part of my DNA because I truly like people. I love helping people, whether it's these up and coming broadcasters, whether it's my players when I was coaching, former players. I don't think you can fake earnestness to a large degree. But let me piggyback on that. Because one of the places you were going was when I explain something on TV, it always has to be about the why. And that's the
Yeah,
essence of
good.
coaching, right? That's the essence of coaching.
Sure.
And I don't
The
care if
why and the how. The why and the how. You're
yeah, the why
exactly right.
exactly. The why first and how we going to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I'm running a major insurance company in Des Moines with 4,000 employees, right? I've got to explain the why we're good at what we do and why we're what we how are we good at what we do. Same thing in coaching, and I feel the same way about broadcasting. So when I hear that's a great pass, and I'm listening, they better come back with, and here's why. When we show the replay, he was looking off his target with his eyes, and then delivers a perfect pass, and he had the defense fooled. Everybody was
Exactly.
moving right, and he threw it left because his eyes deceived the defense. So, it gets back to the why. And I think you and I, because we've been around coaching since we were very, very young, and we've been around, by the way, you and I both have been around great mentors.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
so,
And every experience prepared you for the next one. And
yes,
that's what I worry so much about with young coaches now. But every experience you had, every experience I had,
yeah,
they those were the building blocks to you being able to go and do another job, working for somebody or working in a different
yes.
environment like it is now on television. Whatever it is. I mean, you're exactly right. Here's another thing that I learned a lot about from television. I'd love your opinion on this because I think this is the essence of team building. And we talked about small group leadership. Well, the producer, the director, the associate producer, the cameraman, the one that's up in the third level, uh, all the different people. What I've found in the different groups that I've been with is they want to be the best at what they do. Now they may not be the full-time employee. They may be an independent employee and they're moving around. It may be geographical. But I very rarely, I can't even name it, where I've run into somebody where I say, man, they don't want to be on top of their job. And I think for coaches, for leaders, what it says to me is nobody goes into an environment, okay, at the highest level. And whatever level we're at, that's the highest level, right? That's our level, right? Nobody goes into that environment and says, I don't want to help the team succeed. That's any good. And again, to me, it shows every role on a team is absolutely important. You feel the same way when you see all this?
Well, yeah. You know what? As you're talking, because you and I love football so much, when I do the Big 12 Big Mondays, I usually have the same group of cameramen, and the best analogy, those cameramen are offensive linemen, man. A lot of these guys not only do games I mean, these guys work the NFL, college football. I mean, you got guys that I work with on a given Monday night in Ames, Iowa, that just came from Kansas City and did a playoff game, and it's like four below, and they're outside. Okay, that's the guy in the end zone, or the sideline guy. And so those cameramen that I get to know, I treat them like they're my offensive linemen. And oftentimes when we get to the arena, they're having their little camera meeting with the director. And as you know, and we'll explain this, the director is in the truck, and he's the one that's camera camera two, get self, camera three, get the crowd, And so those cameramen they're like the offensive linemen. They get very little attention and publicity, yet we can't have a great TV show without them. So I get to know their names during the season. I know where they live. I know where they've been. Hey, how was that Cardinals 49ers game yesterday? And it gets back to that inclusion and collaboration deal. And you know this because you and I are preaching to the choir, but for people listening, there's nothing worse that someone big times you. There's nothing worse than a guy who's a talent. He's the analyst. Like I've often said this, Tom. I've said this to you. ESPN will never fire me for being an a-hole, and they'll never fire me for being unprepared. And it's so easy to be kind to people. It's what I've learned through my life. Like kill people with kindness. Shambi's great. He goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. You kill people with kindness, but you got a little New York fu in you too. That's how he says it. But no, I just think that we're a team. We have to try. And if they're the lineman, I'm the star quarterback. Okay, I get it. That night, I'm the star quarterback, and the coach is in the truck, the producer. But nobody wants to work for and with a guy that thinks he's better than everybody, and that eventually will bite you in the behind.
I agree with you. When a long time ago, when I was coaching at Marquette and Megan was younger, we went to California, and so we did different things, and we were able to work out a few things to go to some studios. Well, we actually got a chance to see Hannah Montana being filmed one day. So Billy Ray Cyrus, Miley Cyrus, the whole crew, right? And we loved it. We were in there all day long,
Yeah.
right? Met the people. But one thing stood out to me, and I want to get your opinion on this. the director in one of the scenes, and the other man that was in there was in Anchorman. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was the sports director in Anchorman, and he was in the scenes that day. And they probably redid one scene 13, 14 times in an afternoon. And even though maybe the actors and actresses didn't really want to do it, the director stayed with it because he wanted it to be exactly right.
Right. Wow.
When I ask you between a yeah, exactly, and this was a guy that had been at it for a long time, and when I ask you if you had to pick one thing, okay, because that stood out to me so much,
Yeah.
that makes a head coach great, that is the same thing that makes a director or a producer great, that people could take in whatever line of business. If there was one thing that they've got to have, because to me, that's what it was for me.
Yeah.
You know, like it's got to be right because they know exactly what it's supposed to look like, and you got to trust the vision.
Oh.
What's it for you?
Oh,
What's an
I mean,
example?
as you're asking the question, it's already ruminating in my head, and I can already tell you, it's creating a standard of excellence and holding everybody to it. Okay, and I'll give you an example. Like, and you and I have talked about this in the past. Like the first 25 minutes of every single practice I had as a head coach was fundamental offensive drills, catching, passing, dribbling, shooting, whatever. And trust me, it was monotonous. But what I would tell the guys is, and you've heard me say this, don't get bored if you're getting better. And what I would say to them is, hey, Ted, when's the last time you traveled this year? Coach, I haven't traveled in a game all year. I know. That's why we do the UCLA drill. You know, and I would say to them, you got to have empathy, right? So I'd say, listen, guys, I know you know this, but I'm bored when we do we call it perfection, first 25 minutes. I'm bored too. I want to put the tricky plays in. You know, or if you're the director of the Hannah Montana, you want to get to the final scene, right? You know, the culmination of this, you know.
That's actually what it was. It
Yeah.
was the final scene, and they wanted it to be
Perfect.
They wanted it to be just absolutely perfect.
And that's
it
what
was
I think
amazing.
it is. That production crew had a high standard, and you know those actors and actresses, they might be the best at what they do, but it doesn't mean that you can't hold them to that standard of excellence. And that
you're
to
exactly
me,
right.
that to me was about every single practice that I ever had. And you know, just so people know this, like I knew at the end of the season when I would go back to the practice plans with our coaching staff, and I would say, why are we doing this drill? This doesn't help us. We don't get anything out of this. Like I would analyze what made us have great practices, you know, and it sounds silly, but again, one thing, create a standard of excellence and hold everybody, including yourself, to it. And I don't know if I've told you this in a while, but I had an index card on my desk wherever I coach, and it said, prepare practice like UB Brown and Vince Lombardi were coming today.
I remember that.
Remember,
Yeah,
I grew up
remember
around
you
the
saying
corner.
that
Yeah.
a long time ago.
I grew up around the corner.
And you're exactly right.
Yeah.
You just hit it. The 20, 25 minutes, that should sum up. If somebody walked in and saw your first 20, 25 minutes, or when you walk into somebody's
Yeah.
practice,
Yes.
that should tell you an awful lot about what that program is all about. As we move into, I want to stay on that subject as we move into the season, right? Because I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you some questions about the season that we're in right now in college basketball.
Yeah.
What are a couple of early things that you have seen from practice or in games that you look at and you say, that was really, really good?
Well, I would have to say that it's not X and O, or
Exactly.
I would have to say it's relationships, honestly.
Sure.
I would have to say
You were sharing the Houston story with me last night. I think that would be a great story for this podcast for people to hear.
Yeah,
Kelvin
I got a
Sampson's
couple
obviously
from
one
the
of
week because I was at Nate Oates' practice on Monday, right after the
Sure.
Houston game. But you know, like Kelvin Sampson, we know he's a great coach. We know he's a smart guy. He uses the media to make the point to his team. We know that. I've seen him do it over and over. And he's got two very precocious freshmen. He's got a great freshman class, but two in particular. A guard, Kingston Flemings, and a big guy, Chris Sinak. And he knows they're good. They chose to go to Houston knowing that they were going to get hard coached for at least this year. I think they're both gone to the lottery. But they chose Houston knowing that this guy was going to be on them, be relentless, not let them slide. And they're responding. It's obvious on the court they're responding. They're both off to great starts. And so it's funny because he's been poor mouthing them, not individually, but you can't win with freshmen. They don't know what they don't know. He's kind of creating a message to them, but at the same time, he's preparing them for this season because they get coached hard every day, and they're getting it. It's obvious they're getting it, and he's tough on them. Yet the first two plays of the Auburn game, he ran for his two best players essentially. No disrespect to Sharp and Uzan, but in terms of pure talent, the two best. And they responded. They scored on the first two plays. They have great games. And the next day, when I see the press conference on Monday or Tuesday, he says, just because these two guys had a great game on Sunday, I'm anxious to see what kind of attitude they come in to our next practice. And that's theatrical, as you know, okay? Because he knows in his heart how good they are. And he knows the best way to get the most out of them is to stay relentless. But he does it with a humanity, Tommy. This is where it's really important. Like, he is with them off the court. They're in the office. He can joke around with them. He's got a great staff that can pick up the slack when he has to be the hard ass. He's a guy. He can be the kindly grandfather, but he can also be the stern dad that you don't want to let down. And so I think he does that, terrifically. And it gets back to theatrics. I'll give you an example. When I was coaching, I had one particular player on my team. My first year at Manhattan College, he had already suffered an ACL injury, so he was going to miss the season. Played at DeMatha, Ted Ellis. And he spent the whole year in my office with me. Come in the office, hang out, because he couldn't practice. And the next year when he was eligible to play, healthy, I should say, I could tell we had that special bond because we connected so well. And I said to him, we have a young team. There's going to be days at practice where I'm going to get on your ass, but you have to understand it's not directed at you, it's directed at everybody. And so there were some days where I would just chew them out. And I remember the other thing about coaching that you and I both know, there's nothing better than when you have a hard practice where there's still 7, 8, 9 guys hanging around talking.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Or shooting. Yeah, shooting on the court. Absolutely.
Shooting, talking to the coaches. And I'll never forget one day after a particular practice where I was on him hard. He comes over to me. He's drinking his little Gatorade bottle. And we're sitting there. We're watching guys shoot free throws. And he goes, hey, coach, think you overdid it today? I go, yeah, probably. I go, you okay? He goes, oh, yeah, I'm great. But he just wanted to let me know, like, I know I'm your whipping boy, but you kind of, don't go too far.
Oh, you're right.
He was joking about it, but that's the kind of relationship you can have with players if they truly know you care about them. And that caring has to be 365, 24/7. It's about families. How's your family doing? Where's your sister going to go to school? She's a great lacrosse player. Coach, she really likes Maryland. Wow, that's cool, And all those things add up so that when you ask them to keep the standard high, that standard of excellence, they're with you because they know you care about them.
Absolutely. And again, that being in the gym is so important. I've never coached an NBA player that was one of the last ones in the gym for practice and at the same time one of the first ones out.
Yeah.
Now, I've had guys that come in a little late, maybe because of classes, or not late, but they're rushing in because they had a class in the afternoon. Anthony Edwards didn't love to get to practice early, but it was hard to pull him out after, right? And it's like that's such a big part of it. And you see so many practices. Let's stay on that same subject.
Well, hey, let me tell you one thing
Oaks.
about practice before you ask me, because I think you'll really like this. I think you'll really like this. Because it gets back to the theatrics and relationships.
Sure.
And I know I've told you this story, but I want people to hear this. We had a season, well, the 94-95 team, I had like 8 freshmen and sophomores. We didn't know how good we were to start the year. We really didn't. I was scared out of my mind. And then we were up 48-13 on Fordham at home, our arch rival, and we weren't running it up. We wound up winning by the same amount, But I knew we had a good team, okay? And there was a practice late in the season. I'll never forget this. It's the greatest moment of my coaching career. It beats wins and everything. Because I like you, was very demanding. And I know you know how I was about practice. And we're 22-2. We play on a Monday and we don't play till Saturday. So I give them off Tuesday. And I come in Wednesday morning and I said to my staff, I think we could use another day off. We play Thursday and Friday. We practice Thursday and Friday. We'll play Saturday. I think we're good. I want to keep them sharp, but I don't want them to think I'm satisfied. So here's what we're going to do. 5 minutes into practice, I'm kicking everybody out. I'm going to make something up. And they're looking at me like, really? I go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Now listen, they'll get 2 days off, but they'll also think that I was disappointed and that, I wasn't happy. So 5 minutes in, guy drops a pass in our perfection drill. I go nuts. It's totally an act. You guys think you're better than you are. You're 22-2. You come out here, you BS around, and I kick him out. I go up to my office. You remember Dratty Gym? My office is up on that second
Yeah,
floor.
absolutely.
And my coaches come up and they tell me, that coach, that was good. You really, that was a great acting job. That's an Academy Award right there. 5 minutes later, the managers came up. One of the managers came up and said, Coach, they're still practicing. I said, what are you talking about? I said, no, they didn't leave. They're practicing. They took the practice plan and they're practicing. And my assistant coaches said to me, should we go down there? I said, no, it's not our team anymore. It's their team.
That's really good.
They thought they were letting me down and letting each other down, and they refused to leave. And that is the greatest moment of my coaching career because I had got them to believe that the reason we were so good is because we were a great practice team. And everybody says, "Oh, we practice harder than anybody in the country." Tom, on Saturday mornings in that little gym at Manhattan, we had 7, 8, 9, 10 of the best high school coaches in New York and Jersey at those practices because my guys were like trained SEALs. When they knew coaches were there to watch a Manhattan practice, they kind of knew what the coaches wanted to see. They wanted to see high level intensity, attention to detail, the little things. And so when I kicked them out that day and they refused to leave, I said, we got them. And then, of course, we ended the season with a win over Oklahoma. We got screwed
exactly in the tournament, the NCAA tournament. Absolutely,
we got screwed against Arizona State because you'll love this. I had 5 losses that year. Joe Mingle did 3 of them. He he did the
Hopefully
same.
He's not listening.
I hope he's still alive. If you
Or his family.
Yeah.
His family.
But I lost to St. John's in the Garden on a bad call late. I lost a conference championship game in double overtime on a bad call late. We still got in as an at-large, miraculously. And the Arizona State game, we score to go up 5 with 4 to go. He waves it off, calls a charge on my guy. The place is going nuts. But anyway, my whole point is, the theatrics of creating a mindset that the standard of excellence.
Hey, all these years later, here this is the adage right here. You remember the wins, but you live with the losses, right? No matter what. All those years later, still live with it. Final couple questions, and I want to ask this because this is topical in the sense that you saw Alabama the other day. Then they go into the United Center in Chicago and they beat a very good Illinois team. When you were in that Alabama practice, you watched Nate Oates practice, you leave that practice. What did you see that made you look at that and say, you know what? I'm not surprised they go on the road and win like that.
Well, he has a great confidence level in himself. Like, I would say this to him. I'm going to say it on the air, so he may hear this. He's a very confident, close to arrogant, but there's a humility about him. And let me tell you what I mean. He always hires guys that are really smart.
Mm-hmm. He sure does.
You and I have said this to each other before. A's hire A's and B's hire C's.
Sure.
And so he's got like Chris Fleming. He's lost coaches. Think about it. He's already gotten a number of guys head coaching jobs.
Absolutely.
And then he goes and hires smart people.
Or I believe in 2 years, correct?
Yeah,
I think
Ryan Pinot now at Arkansas State, Hodgson over at South Florida. He's got Chris Fleming that just came from the NBA. He's got Brian Adams who's been in the NBA. So, but here's what I mean by that. I don't mean that as a criticism. I think I consider this a positive. He believes in what he believes in. He hires great people to implement it. And then he breathes confidence into the players. Not once during the practice did they take a shot that he complained about. And they didn't take a lot of bad shots. They took a lot of open threes. LeBaron Philon did not make a shot on Monday. I text with Nate after the win where the kid was brilliant. He was brilliant against St. John's. And I laughed because like he's created a mindset with that kid of amnesia. That kid could miss 3 in a row and he's going to take the 4th one. And so I think what really stood out to me with Nate is just this, inherent belief in this is how we're going to play. We're going to play fast. We're going to shoot a lot of threes. That means you guys have got to shoot a lot of threes, meaning the players. And I'm going to live with the 7-foot kid shooting a three. And I think breathing confidence in his team was something that stood out to me.
That makes a lot of sense. This final question, and I think this hits a lot of people. You've got to tell James and Matt, okay? Obviously, you've told them a lot over the years, two coaches. I think this is great because everybody's got a view of sports right now and of being coached and being coached hard or being coached tough or not tough enough and moving around, all those different things. What's the best piece of advice you could give your sons, a young player, parents of a player, or somebody going through this process right now of trying to make a career about this subject, mental toughness? What would you tell them?
You
Or
know,
what have you told them?
I will say this to you because I've observed it in both of my sons, and I don't necessarily think they got it from me. But what I'm most proud of with both of them, James is a 5'10", 150-pound NBA coach. All right, and what I'm most proud of with them is number one, they're themselves. They're not dad. I was sometimes, like you, very intense. They're honest. James has the ability to tell CJ McCollum, I don't think that was a good shot. That's not a good shot you took right here. We still have. I know you're a great player. You made that shot, but look over here. I think Sar was open, and we're trying to get him confident, CJ. So now this is all made up. He didn't do this. This is just me talking.
I understand.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want to.
But you're talking about honesty in people.
Honesty.
Being honest with themselves and then being honest with other people.
Being honest, I think that's so key. And I think sometimes parents have got to have I think self-awareness is a word I've been using a lot lately. Like, you got to have a self-awareness of knowing who you are and knowing that you don't know it all or that you're different and explaining something than the next guy. But what I love about the two coaches in my family, they can be brutally honest with players or their head coach and still have and cultivate a great relationship with them. And I think that's critical because I know I had a couple occasions in my coaching career where I didn't have people on my staff that would tell me the truth. They told me what I wanted to hear. And and I just think that wasn't good for me. And I would do that over again. Trust me. I would absolutely try to hire people smarter than me. But anyway, I think honesty is a big part of relationships, coaching, business. And I'll tell you this. This is kind of funny as we wind this down. I got fired 5 times at Ohio University. But Danny Nee hired me 6 times. And I was fired.
All within 24 hours, I'm sure.
Yeah. And the worst thing he
Or
could ever say to
22
me, here's the worst thing he could ever say to me. Don't come into the office tomorrow. Some guys would have gone out and played nowadays pickleball all day, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
It killed me
Yeah.
when he said, don't come into the office tomorrow. You need to think about this. Like, I got a technical foul once. We're playing Ball State. We're up 27, okay? In the second half, I get a technical foul. I'm this young schmuck assistant coach. And in the locker room, he said to me, you're making me miserable, okay? I can't even enjoy a 27-point win. So he fired me. He didn't really fire me. He said, don't come in tomorrow. At 11:45, he said, get your ass in here. We're going to lunch. And then so he proceeded to mentor me. But he was honest. And he was always deliberately honest with me. And I never had to hesitate to know where he was coming from because of that. So I think honesty is something that I see that's missing sometimes because we all want to be liked and we all want the players to like us. And we've heard a million times, like, you'd rather have them respect you than like you. But I think they'll like you if they respect you and you build that relationship with them. I think they go hand in hand. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Well, that puts a bow on a great interview. I know that. Like, this is, people are going to enjoy this. We'll do it again, when Jim or John are available after their season and things like that and talk more about college basketball. You and I could do one every week talking about college basketball, the draft. But
Yeah.
what I wanted people to see the experiences and the knowledge and just the way you see things through so many different lenses. But you see, and even though you wear a lot of different hats and have worn a lot of different hats, what you just summed it up with, honesty. And I think that is, obviously, that is a trait that people can take, and they may not be liked as much, but they won't be wrong. And
No.
I think that's the bottom line. Well, Fran, I really enjoy this. On behalf of the Harbaughs, on behalf of Lessons from the Sideline here, this was outstanding. And join us again
Yep.
next week for another episode. But thank you to Fran Fraschilla, who you can see his work on X. You can see his work on ESPN, occasionally ESPN2. And if there's a basketball topic that's important, he's gonna understand it, have a comment on it, and you'll be a lot better after you read it or heard it. Thank you, Fran.
My pleasure, Tom.